So welcome, everyone. So first of all, Sheena, as you check with your dad's dear friend, do me a favor and make sure that he can hear me now. The sound is on, but it's important to me on behalf of the family that your dad's dear friend can hear us. So I'm going to wait for a moment to get that confirmation. Yeah, no problem. No problem. But and let me actually say, just as a introduction, so my name is Rabbi John Linder, and although it's not specifically in my resume, it should be that I am blessed to be Sean Brown's rabbi, and just from the love of the Solel community for Sean, it's our honor to grieve and to remember David Brown this morning, and I also, because our respective traditions, like 99.1% are on common ground, as in the most important person in this room is Bar. Is it the earthly, Jody? Is it the earthly mother, our earthly mother? But could you make sure she understood what I just said? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And the prayers that I will offer do honor David's Jewish roots, being a Jew. And I hope that you'll also just receive them in the universal way. These words were divinely inspired. Death has taken our beloved David Brown. Our friends grieve in their darkened world. In their silence, there is lamentation. In their tears, there is loneliness. Lost in their sorrow, may they find the presence of loving friends. Hear them, O God, be with them. For David's love that united us in life and which death cannot sever, should be remembered and continued through the tenderness of memory. For the gifts of his heart and mind that brought joy and happiness, now a precious remembrance. For all these and more, we give thanks to God. The psalmist offers these words: "Happy are those who have not followed the counsel of the wicked, or taken the path of sinners, or joined the company of the insolent. Rather, the teaching of God is their delight, and they study that teaching day and night. They, like David, are like a tree planted beside streams of water that yields its fruit in season, whose foliage never fades, and whose fruit always flourishes." And the psalmist asks, "Adonai, who may abide in your house, who may dwell in your holy mountain?" And then they answer, "Those like David who are upright, who do justly, who speak the truth within their hearts, who do not slander others or wrong them or bring shame upon them, who scorn the lawless but honor those who revere God, who do not exploit others, who do not take bribes. Those who live in this way shall never be shaken." And for those familiar with the English translation of the 23rd Psalm, and actually being in America, something that lots of people don't even know what the source of this is, but perhaps familiar words. And should they be familiar and you want to join me, you're invited to do so. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. I lift my eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your protector will not slumber. God is your guardian. God is your protection at your right hand. The sun will not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm. God will guard your soul, your going and coming, now and forever. And from the eternal wisdom from the book Ecclesiastes, popularized by the Byrds, the words, for everything there is a season. For everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we remember David Brown. In the blowing of the wind and the chill of winter, we remember him. In the opening of buds and the rebirth of spring, we remember him. In the rustling of leaves and the beauty of autumn, we remember him. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember him. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember him. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember him. When we have joys we yearn to share, we remember him. So long as we live, so too shall David live, for he is a part of us as we remember him. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, but life is a journey, a going, a growing from stage to stage, from childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength or strength to weakness and often back again. From health to sickness and back we pray to health again. From offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey, stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, but life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage made stage by stage, from birth to death to life everlasting. In his sorrow, Job cried out, Adonai natan va'Adonai lekach, yehi shem Adonai mevarach. God has given, God has taken away. Blessed be the name of God. An ancient people, we are well acquainted with grief in the valley of shadows. Death and sorrow are not strangers to us, yet the centuries have taught us that a good name endures beyond the grave and that there is strength in faith. With Job, we say, Adonai Natan. God, you have given us a loved one who will not be forgotten. For all that was good and enduring in his life, we offer the deepest thanks of our hearts. Adonai lakach, God, you have taken away. We pray for the strength to turn our broken hearts into an altar of trust before which we acknowledge your sovereignty and love. As we say, Hishem Adonai Mevarach, blessed be the name of God now and forever. We take a moment to pray in silence, and may the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our strength and our Redeemer. David and Jody, blessed with two wonderful children, both who will speak today. And Sheena, you won the coin toss. So come on up. I have a feeling you've been winning that coin toss all your life.
Thank you. As we convene today, we are gathering in great sorrow in the loss of my father, but also in great love to commemorate my father and his life. In a room filled with family members, neighbors, and friends, I thank you all for being here today to honor him and to remember him for the brilliant, kind, and talented person he was. When I think of my father's passing, I am inundated with emotions, from guilt to anger to a draining sadness that someone we love was taken from us so suddenly, so inexplicably, so soon. The past 2 months have compelled me to find ways to cope with the enormity of his loss. In doing so, I have done what so many of us do when we grieve. I have tried to reflect on the best parts of my father and his life, but to also derive meaning from a situation that is so incredibly difficult to process and understand. As a father, my dad was an excellent teacher. He could teach you the most important skills one should learn in life, not just by modeling, but through the most patient of instruction. My dad could explain things to you in a way that was clear and understandable, guiding you through your mistakes and seeing them as an opportunity for improvement, not as a justification for punishment. And of course, he always kept his calm, even under the most trying of circumstances, whether I was running over too many curbs when learning to drive, or asking him to explain a problem to me 10 more times, simply because it didn't make sense to me. I remember him spending countless hours with me as a child, helping me come up with just the right words to say in a presentation, defining vocabulary in books I didn't understand, and delving into complicated textbooks, sometimes for hours a night, just so we could tackle those incomprehensible math word problems. Even as a young adult in graduate school, he edited my thesis with such perfection that it exceeded everyone's expectations, especially my own. I was a better student because of him, but I am also a better thinker because of him. As an adolescent, instead of partying like my peers, I was being raised with an appreciation for the arts, attending museums, the theater, and the symphony, gaining experiences that most people my age did not have. My father and I would often have conversations about his intellectual interests, and it is through these discussions that I learned to see information from multiple angles, to understand others' perspectives, and above all, to always consider what is moral, what is ethical, and what is right. My dad helped me become not only a critical thinker, but an independent thinker, which is perhaps one of the most important skills to teach our children. Of course, my dad, in being human, had his challenges and quirks. He was extremely regimented and stuck to a definite routine, always needing to do things the same way or go to the same places all the time. And if you ever tried to do things differently, he simply would not budge. I recall a funny memory when my dad's best friend Phyllis visited during Christmas several years ago. At one point, she appeared quite frazzled and came up to me and said, "If I ever have to go to Walgreens again, I swear I'm going to lose it." While we can look at some of his flaws with a sense of humor and admiration, there was also a darker side to my father's life. He had a lifelong battle with depression, which is something he could mask quite well. He had so much loss and abandonment in his life that he often withdrew into himself, falling into a darkness that I could not take him out of. So when my father faced so much physical turmoil with a stroke and fall, I thought that patching a physical problem was a more surmountable feat than trying to fix a lifetime of emotional ones. As hard as we fought to save him, my dad fought even harder. But there are just some things in life that are beyond our control, and we could not save him, and that was hard. But I would like to think that, although we couldn't save his physical life, the time we spent with him, with its endless compassion and love, enacted some healing for his soul, as well as ours. As we all know, my father was an incredible writer. I always marveled at his ability to draw on a reader with such enthusiasm and interest, develop a story, and conclude his thoughts with such passion and poignancy. If you ever wanted to understand my father, to uncover the parts of him that he hid from the world, and to see his soul, you could read it in his writing. The conundrum about my father, though, is that he could excitedly and easily tell other people's stories, but he could never tell his own story, not even to his children. Most of what I knew about my father's past was told to me by my mother and his dearest of friends, never by my father. The truth is, there was so much about my father I simply did not know, and I wish I knew more. I would have liked to have known him better. As a child, I did not understand why he wouldn't let me in. I wanted to learn so much about his childhood, his parents, his life, but he kept that part of himself locked and closed away. I thought that if I pushed hard enough, if I loved him enough, that it would change things, and that door would finally open. As an adult, I realized that relationships aren't that easy, and human beings just aren't that simple. So when it came time for my father to push back in, I shut him out, not knowing how to communicate either, and I'm sorry for that. Perhaps I inherited some of that stubbornness of his that everyone keeps talking about. I hope he knew that in his final days of life, I came back for him. In fact, I never really left at all. I was always there, and I still am. And it is in these days I saw his defenses weaken, and that door finally opened. Prior to his death, my father lost his ability to walk, to eat, to talk, and eventually to respond. As his abilities waned, he became more vulnerable and receptive to human connection. My father, a man who could never give you a proper hug or make prolonged eye contact, was now holding our hands and looking up at us without restraint and with love. Interestingly, in preparing for his death, it almost looked like my dad didn't fear the things he did in life anymore. That is why I am not only so grateful to his loved ones for caring for him in his time of need, but especially to his neighbor Mike for finding and saving him. If it wasn't for Mike's actions, we would have likely have not had the chance to say our goodbyes and to give my father the peaceful passing he deserved. My father did not die alone. He passed in a room filled with beauty, serenity, and love. In saying goodbye to my father, I have learned much about myself. or perhaps saw the parts of myself that I refused so long to see. My dad was someone who never stopped doing the things he loved. No matter how tired he was, he kept writing. No matter how long the trail was, he kept hiking. And even when it was 110 degrees outside, he kept on running. Up until the very end, my father kept fighting. For years of my life, I stopped doing the things I loved, and I did it because I let others convince me I didn't deserve it. I did it to gratify other people, which is no sacrifice anyone should make. So in the greatest of irony in facing my father's death, I've learned that I need to start living my life. And as I continue to live on, I will remember the most valuable lessons my father taught me, especially in his final days. That redemption is possible, forgiveness is healing, and real love is unconditional. What I saw as my father took his last breath did not look so much like death, but rather life leaving the body. It is a memory that will forever remain ingrained in my soul and will never stop reminding me of my humanity. If I can still talk to Dad, I would like to tell him that I hope his story has no ending, that it continues on, writing itself in such a way that it gives him the things he was deprived of in his life, so he can have everything he ever wanted and deserves. When I envision him in his transcendence, this is how I see him, and this is how I would tell his story. These are the words I would write for you, Dad. I see you basking in the light of happiness, with a fearless understanding that the darkness can no longer take it from you. I see you taking comfort in knowing you are truly loved, with an unyielding faith that your love will never leave you. And through all the pain and suffering you have endured, and I know you had so much suffering, I see God granting you the chance to finally be at peace. Thank you.
Move these down a little bit. I'm a little short. Thanks, Dad. One evening, I was struggling with a bolt on my car, only to cut myself in the attempt to dislodge this stubborn fastener. I came inside the house to speak to my dad and ask for some help. He noticed how frustrated I was, and to alleviate my pain, he calmly reminded me of a saying that he had. He said, "Sean, muscle cars, life, and women all share a common trait. They're only exciting when they come close to killing you." He knew how to make me smile when I needed it most. My father was a wonderful writer. He captured the world one written word at a time, one published article at a time. He showed me effective writing can be reduced to the basic principles of story construction: a who, a what, a where, a when, a how, and most importantly, a why. David Michael Brown lived for his work, his dogs, his friends, his children from April 1953 to July 2024 in Mesa, Arizona, and always with a smile. Those first 5 principles are easily dictated. However, the final principle, a why, often remains the most elusive but satisfying aspect of any chronicle. The secret to a well-told narrative, my father taught me, lies in allowing the reader to decipher the why upon the story's conclusion. For every one of you, my father's why may be different: a teacher, a colleague, a lifelong friend, even a hiking partner. For me, my father's why was difficult at first to decipher. When I reflected quietly, slowly, patiently, like the sunrises he watched every morning, it finally dawned on me. My father, to me, was my guide. He showed me a path to acknowledging every moment as an opportunity for happiness and to punctuate always, fervently, every interaction by the spoken singularity of thank you. Growing up, my dad took me to countless automotive and architectural interviews. When he gathered information, I could tell he was interested in why a car, why a home made the interviewee happy. These were far beyond their physical worth. He appreciated that the physical realm of value was simply a medium of exchange to appreciate the true value of life, the formation of experience, happiness, and most importantly, his appreciation of your value to his life. In his perspective, I will attempt to narrate his words, for he could not speak at the end. I'm sure he would acclaim sincerity in this transposition's finality. Thank you to my publishers and business colleagues. You enable me to live my life as I loved, in writing. Transposing black text on white paper, we colored stories and memories that surpasses meaning in any word count. Each and every sentence, paragraph, and article are as much a part of me as they are part of you. I loved every moment I spent seeking a publication and learning about the wonderful people that you are. Your candor lives beyond the written word. Thank you for every captured moment. Thank you to my friends, my neighbors, and all those seated here. You are my family. For everyone in this beautiful sanctuary, know that your light brought me clarity and lucidity in loving form. I hope you realize that the greatness lies in every one of you. There's not a moment I would consider wasted in your presence, and I implore you to love every experience you have ahead of you. Remember our time as life well spent, for I was better a person through our shared experience. Thank you to my daughter Sheena. From the first steps you took, to the push car that you took your first ride in, even to the VHS tapes you wore out, I am indefinitely proud of you. I may be gone, but trust in your family, Jim, and your brother. They'll never let you down. To my son, Sean, for every bolt we struggled in the engine bays, every car show attended, every house project finished, and especially every weekend with the puppies, thank you. I am gone now, but remember, whenever two muscle cars line at a stoplight, whenever you finish a Home Depot struggle, whenever an Arizona sunset tears behind the valley's peaks, I am here. Think of me when the turbo spools, the exhaust cracks the midnight air, and the tires break loose from Earth's gravitational hold. I am here in the swift bellows and echoes of the night. Thank you all. Strive for the truth in life. You shall find life's true excitement in the everlasting search. I love you all. My father and I shared a passion and love for Robert Frost's poetry. On his table, I had given him my anthology for Father's Day, and he had left an earmarked page. It's oddly fitting, and I'll share it with you here. Nothing gold can stay. Nature's first green is gold, her hardest hue to hold. Her early leaf's a flower, but only so an hour. Then leaf subsides to leaf, so Ian sank to grief. So dawn goes down today. Nothing gold can stay. Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi.
So I have known Sean for many years, and I did meet David in this sanctuary, but a clear observation. Jody, the apples do not fall far from the tree. Both David and you, would be hard-pressed to find anyone who can express themselves in words from the heart more Sheena and more Sean than you expressed. And that is a great compliment to your dad and your mom. So just from really the time, Sean, we spent a couple weeks ago, just to add a few more reflections. David Brown, the Philly boy who ended up with a fascination of the West. He was a writer by trade. A number of his colleagues here today. Trade magazines, local newspapers, architectural, green living magazines, automotive, certainly a sweet spot. And in those interviews, Sean, as you said, you got to see some big garages and some amazing cars. And David loved talking to people, easy to get along with, and a passion, as both Sheena and Sean you expressed, a passion for writing, for muscle cars, for nature, hiking, and dogs. Aside from his family, his pride and joy was, I believe, if I've got this right, Sean, an 87 black Buick Regal turbocharged, completely rebuilt. Sean, and you expressed how you loved being with your dad on weekends working on rebuilding cars. For sure, taught you a lot about cars, but in the process, taught you more about life and living. And Jim, you have to know that one of the first things Sean shared with me was the blessing, his last hike being with you and how much he loved it, and no doubt savoring every footstep on the trail. And perhaps David's signature wisdom passed on to his daughter and son, I'm sure shared by all of you. Everybody blessed to be in David's orbit. And this is quoting you, quoting your dad's wisdom, Sean. Treat everyone, no matter their lot in life, with the same amount of respect. Didn't matter, it doesn't matter how much money you had. What matters is your kindness in the world. And Sean, again, you sharing your father's simple philosophy of life was to greet human beings with an open hand instead of a closed hand. Sheena, what a blessing, your dad, a great teacher to you in real life ways, critical thinking, and Jody, your gratitude for the wonderful father David was to your children, and the blessing, because it wouldn't have been without David, the blessing for you to have the children that you do. David could close his eyes in peace, and Sheena, your words deepened what I had prepared to say. David could close his eyes in peace, expressing in the way that he could, asking for forgiveness and receiving your request for forgiveness. Beauty, serenity, and love, love from family and friends, and yes, the blessing and the grace of redemption. David Michael Brown leaves behind the imperishable crown of a Shem Tov, of a good name. He'll be deeply, deeply missed and never, never forgotten. Jody, Sean, Sheena, do you know David's Hebrew name by chance? I mean, David is a Hebrew name itself. Okay. I know how to translate that into Hebrew.